Hello, my name is Lubabalo Ntsholo. I'm the program developer for the Succulent Carrow Ecosystem Program, popularly known as SCEP. Employed my son in this position now for almost over a year now. As you know, we were in Mpumalanga last week on the Land Reform and Biodiversity Stewardship Initiative, a program that is a partnership program between SANBI, our own institution, and as well as the Department of Environmental Affairs and then the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. And the main initiative, the main objective behind the initiative is that we need to bring together the two imperatives of biodiversity conservation and land reform, because land reform requires land to be given to those people who were previously denied access to land because of their skin color. Yes, I mean, we require acres and acres of land to ensure that representative species are secured and protected, and yet we need land to ensure that it serves its socio-economic value in that people are able to improve their livelihoods based on what they do or on how they utilize the land, either for agricultural purposes or otherwise. And the problem has always been that biodiversity conservation can't quantify its economic value. People can't immediately see how valuable conservation is to their livelihoods. Okay. Yeah. So we identified the challenge that we can't run away from each other as these sectors, conservation and land reform, are not two mutually exclusive imperatives. So we identify they need to talk to each other, they need to ensure that we build harmony between these two sectors, and they need to ensure that our people see the value of conserving the rich natural resources within their lands. This forum was a third such forum. We had two forums in 2009 when we started the initiative. One in Somkanda in KZN. Somkanda was a restitution claim as well, and they've set aside quite a huge chunk of their land for conservation. And then we went to Pretoria, the National Botanical Gardens, in November 2009. And this one in Middelburg now, Bochabelo, was our third. And what is common throughout all these learning exchanges that we bring together various people from different sectors. When we had biodiversity conservation people, we had people from rural development and land reform. We had your land reform practitioners from non-governmental organizations. We have NGOs as well representing the conservation sector, and we had government departments like your DIA, Department of Environmental Affairs, SANParks, these provincial agencies like Eastern Cape Parks Board, Mpumalanga Tourism, and what is it, MTPA? I don't know what it's called, but the value of these learning exchanges is that people get to see what others are doing, because most of these land reform projects are experiencing the same problems, and it's how they deal with those problems that makes the difference between successful and less successful projects. Because we tend to always say conserve these species for the sake of your children and children's children, and yet we don't look at the intra-generational justice of whether these people now will be able to have bread on their table at the end of the day, if they will be able to feed their children. We are sort of failing to convince people to set pieces of land aside for conservation, and it's partly a historical problem, because most of the land reform beneficiaries that you go to, they would tell you that if you tell them to put aside pieces of their land, they'll tell you that they can't eat plants, they can't eat frogs, and of course they can't eat plants and frogs. And what we say to the people, we need to make sure that the message we deliver to them is less complicated. It's not scientific because they're not scientists. It's something that can be easily assimilated by lay people. But there are, of course, people who understand the value of our natural resources, and that's what we ignore in this sector, is that there are deeply entrenched traditional knowledge systems in these communities. These people have been ecologists and conservationists for generations. So they know traditionally what to do and when to do it to ensure that they have productive pieces of land. And I think as the scientific community, we have ignored that. We want to impose our own way of doing things to them. But I think this initiative, that's why this initiative, the timing of it was so opportune, because for the first time there is willingness from both sides to listen to each other. Whereas those hardcore land reform practitioners would think of conservation as an old white sector for old white people. They are now beginning to talk, they are beginning to realize that, of course, climate conditions are changing, the water is becoming scarce, so there is interconnectedness between agriculture, rural development, land reform and conservation, which is the natural base from which all economic activity springs from. And of course, within the sector, people do realize that it's no longer feasible to just fence off pieces of land in light of dire social and economic conditions in which the majority of our people find themselves living under. So it's up to us now as the leaders in the sector to make sure that we draft programs and projects that are responsive to the needs of the people on the ground. And you see that the problems that they are facing are almost similar. Everybody is crying about lack of support from the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, the developmental grants that our restitution projects are supposed to get to help them catalyze their farming activities are almost non-existent. So the problems are similar. Whereas, for instance, in Mukhaba, there's about 26,000 hectares that have been restored back to the community. But the leadership is almost dysfunctional because there's no capacity, and they do acknowledge that they have no capacity to do anything in the land. It's a huge piece of land. They have no resources, they have no capital, they have nothing. They've just been set there to fail. I believe that some of these land reform projects that we are really setting our people up for failure. We need the leaders in our communities to be properly trained so that they can manage these huge projects on their own. We need them to be trained not only in producing in terms of agriculture, but also in linking their projects to the markets, to both regional, national and international markets. And that's what we are not doing currently as the country. The popular shortcut is to just partner these communities with previous owners of the land who are obviously white, obviously have experience in farming, and these people do not pass on the skills to these communities. And yeah, that's the problem that we are facing with land reform in the country. And now we're adding an additional burden of conservation. And if we are not willing as the sector as well to address those problems of capacity, the post-settlement support that is lacking, then we might as well stop. Because we won't succeed. The communities will rise up against us and say we're colonizing them for the second time. So unless we are willing to go through these communities to provide all the support that they need, of course working together with the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, we won't get anywhere close. It will come from, because obviously these initiatives need a huge injection of capital resources. So we need to identify who among us is going to be doing what in order to address these problems. Because they are huge. No single department can address the problems of land reform, let alone land reform and biodiversity conservation. So this initiative provides us with a very a valuable forum where people from different sectors can have a common understanding of what needs to be done in order to protect our environment and in order to ensure that our people's livelihoods are better off than they were before they received the land that they are now occupying because of the land reform program. I also made a statement at the forum that we cannot win today's battles by using yesteryear's tools. Times have moved on, our communities have changed, our understandings have changed. So while previously the sector was only concerned with species and species only, and I think now the time has arrived for us to look at the entire functioning of the ecosystem, which people are very part and parcel of. There's just no conceivable way at this point in time where a person can claim to be looking after the natural systems of the natural environment while ignoring the plight of the people. You just can't ensure that you have representative ecosystems if you leave out the most advanced of these species, which are human beings. Because when human beings are hungry, what do? They go trash the environment. When they are rich, what do? They go trash the environment. So it's not a matter of whether a person is rich or poor, but it's a matter of understanding, of more especially among those of us whose livelihoods depends primarily on the exploitation of our natural resources. We need to offer them alternatives. You can't just go and say, stop grazing your stock in this piece of land because you've exceeded your grazing capacity. I know that our mandate is not social development, but it's conservation. But conservation, by its very nature, is multidisciplinary. It includes people's well-being as well. Now, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't necessarily believe that. But in this sector, we have a lot of experience, high caliber individuals who have decades and decades of experience in pure science, and that's what they've always believed, that this is pure science. And I think we need a new injection of new blood in the sector. We need those experienced people to mentor new people in science, but we need these new people as well to inject new blood, a new way of thinking in the sector. I think until such time that such consciousness is raised among our scientists, among our planners, we are still going to struggle. But slowly but surely, it's a gradual process. It's not as fast as some of us would want it to be, but it's something that is happening. And yeah, I believe that there's a revolution underway in the sector. I mean, we don't need to think only about species. We need to think about economics. We need to think about livelihoods. We need to think about rural development. We need to think about people. Because at the end of the day, natural systems can well manage themselves without our interference. We are having people, a lot of money invested in conservation because of the impact that human beings are having on our environment. So unless we make sure that our people's understanding, consciousness, and their socio-economic well-being is up to scratch, then we won't succeed. So my message is that conservation is about people, not our natural environment, because they don't need us. We need nature. Nature doesn't need us.
Great.